Observing the true psychology of people who wear Gucci nowadays has become a fascinating sport of behavioral analysis. Walking through busy streets of Los Angeles or avenues in Miami reveals a rather curious visual pattern. Suddenly, an individual appears shining from blocks away, flaunting a belt buckle with a GG so giant that it could probably be tracked from the International Space Station. This golden buckle screams wealth loud and clear to the universe. But ironically, it usually serves to hold up the pants of someone whose credit card is dying and who has a credit score on life support. Gucci, in modern culture, has stopped being just a luxury brand to become the official, notarized certificate of I need to look successful at any cost. The deep human need to display social superiority found its perfect ecosystem in garments covered in logos from head to toe. It is no longer about appreciating fine tailoring or European heritage, but rather ensuring that absolutely everyone in the Starbucks line knows that there is a human being who agreed to pay $1,500 for a cotton hoodie just because it has giant letters on the chest. It is the classic human billboard syndrome, in which the consumer spends a true fortune for the privilege of working as an unpaid poster boy for a megacorporation. But to understand exactly how this old symbol of the classical elite ended up on the bodies of people who record videos flaunting rented sports cars on the streets, one must observe how the profile of this brand has undergone a bizarre mutation over the last decades. There was a time in a past that today sounds almost like a collective delirium, when owning a Gucci piece was a silent privilege reserved for the old aristocracy, era movie stars, and heirs to centuries-old fortunes who spent their summers in the Hamptons. They were extremely refined leather goods focused on artisanal excellence, in which luxury did not need to scream. Money did not need to announce its presence at the top of its lungs, simply because everyone at the country club already knew who belonged to that universe. However, the market changed aggressively and subtlety was gently thrown out the window. Nowadays, that air of European nobility has been completely transmuted into the official and irrevocable uniform of rappers recording millionaire music videos in Atlanta, TikTok teenagers living squeezed together in collaboration mansions in the Hollywood Hills, and internet financial gurus who record ads in front of rented Lamborghinis to sell get-rich-quick courses. The fashion industry realized exactly where the impulsive money was and embraced the culture of ostentation with full force. What used to be a discreet monogram hidden in the lining of a travel bag turned into a true carnival of Logomania. Collections were flooded with sports jackets and hoodies covered in gaudy colors, snarling tigers, giant embroidered snakes, and the classic green and red stripes that seem designed to catch the attention of pedestrians 3 blocks away. But by flooding pop culture with this excessively flashy style, the biggest possible side effect for any high-end empire occurred: the sudden death of exclusivity. When absolutely any 20-year-old kid who just got rich selling cryptocurrencies in Miami appears on the internet wearing the same $3,000 tracksuit, the magic of prestige evaporates into thin air. Overexposure made these designer pieces become as common on social media feeds as dog videos. The brand stopped being the access key to a secret elite circle and became the standard uniform of those who are sweating cold to convince society that they have finally succeeded in life. This dizzying transition from a symbol of classic good taste to the basic survival kit of the nouveau riche leads us into an even deeper abyss regarding modern human behavior. After all, what exactly goes on in the brain of someone who feels the need to wear a giant fluorescent sign to feel that their bank account is real? Diving into the mind of those who consume logos in industrial proportions is almost like conducting a fascinating anthropological study on human insecurity. At the center of this culture of ostentation, which reaches its absolute peak on the sidewalks of Rodeo Drive or in the extravagant lobbies of Las Vegas casinos, exists the palpable desperation of the so-called new money, the classic nouveau riche. For this specific demographic group, wealth is not a state of financial comfort and peace of mind, but rather an event of uninterrupted public performance. After all, what is the point of closing a millionaire contract in Silicon Valley, being the first pick in the NFL draft, or winning an unexpected windfall with meme stocks in the stock market if you cannot wear a hoodie that screams your net worth to absolute strangers in traffic? In the psychology of the American nouveau riche, money quietly kept in index funds is invisible, therefore useless for the immediate validation of the ego. If your level of success does not blind the pedestrian next to you, to your brain, it practically did not happen. What these logo-saturated brands started selling was not exactly clothing, but rather the most expensive and shiny social armor ever invented. When the individual spends $800 for a basic cotton t-shirt that will probably shrink tragically in the first wash, the real transaction has absolutely nothing to do with haute couture. He is, literally, buying a wearable receipt. Logomania works as an extremely expensive and statistically inefficient therapy session, where the garments try to cure the traumas of not having been the popular kid in high school or having been snubbed by a waiter in Manhattan 5 years ago. It is the biological need to rub in society's face that the Ferris wheel of life has finally turned in their favor, transforming their own body into a walking LED billboard that silently begs for a little respect and a lot of envy from others. This caricatured behavior mirrors the illusory belief that personal value is directly connected to the legible price on the tag and the font size of the logo. Aggressive ostentation with unmistakable geometric patterns has become a defense mechanism, so obvious that it has become the main joke among the most cynical observers of modern consumerism. The distorted logic dictated by this psychology suggests that the larger the golden emblem stamped on the chest, the smaller the need to present any other reasonable human quality, such as charisma, intelligence, or minimal basic manners. The signboard on the clothes simply arrives before the person themselves in the room, making introductions in a noisy and often embarrassing way. However, it is exactly in this feverish desperation for attention, bathed in gaudy colors and accessories that seem to weigh 3 kilos, that the most hilarious and cruel contrast of the social pyramid emerges. Because, while the nouveau riche juggles finances to prove they have money shouting to the four winds, the true owners of the country's largest fortunes operate on a visual frequency that borders on invisibility. To understand how pathetic Logomania culture has become, one only needs to do a quick exercise of observation and contrast with the true top of capitalism's food chain. On one side of this imaginary ring, we have the so-called old money, or the followers of stealth wealth, the famous silent wealth. We are talking about figures who circulate naturally through the corridors of Wall Street, close trillion-dollar deals in Silicon Valley meeting rooms, or spend their winter holidays skiing in the exclusive mountains of Aspen. This true American billionaire, whose net worth could easily buy a small island in the Pacific, usually leaves home wearing a perfectly dull gray sweater, with absolutely no visible label, accompanied by beige chinos and slightly worn loafers. The ironic and cruel detail: this harmless cashmere sweater, which looks like it was fished out of a roadside clearance sale in the Midwest, actually costs $5,000 and was handmade by artisans in a remote village in the Italian Alps. This individual does not need to prove to the valet or the supermarket cashier that he is fabulously wealthy, simply because his last name already sponsors the pediatric wing of the city's hospital. On the other side of the sidewalk, in a visual contrast that almost blinds the peripheral vision, we have the enthusiast of the flashy style. This is the character who enters a nightclub in South Beach, looking like a short-circuited neon lampshade, covered in interlocking logos from head to toe, flaunting a shiny hoodie that cost almost $2,000. The cosmic joke of this situation is that, while the Aspen hair makes no effort to show off what he has, Our cringe Logomania hero most likely split this extravagant jacket on his credit card using some online installment app, compromising the income of the next 18 months just to impress people he despises. It is the personification of excessive and painful effort. The supreme irony of contemporary fashion is the desperate need to look rich has become the most accurate indicator that the person probably is not. There is an old saying that money talks, but true wealth only whispers. When someone chooses to dress like a Formula One, sponsored by a luxury brand, the human brain quickly decodes this message, not as a sign of overwhelming financial success, but as a cry for help issued by a bank account living dangerously close to the limit. This colossal abyss between those who hide their fortune out of pure boredom and those who display their lack of it out of pure insecurity throws us straight into one of the most fascinating and tragic phenomena of the modern economy, which ironically and inescapably leads us to the epicenter of this consumerist insanity: the glorious rise of the premium poor. It is a social category that expanded voraciously through suburban areas and large metropolises, where the main life goal stopped being accumulating real wealth, buying solid stocks, or paying off a mortgage. Instead, the true goal became strictly spending the entire revolving limit of credit cards to rent the temporary appearance of resounding success. The equation of this paradox is tragicomic. The individual spends $3,500 on a striped fanny pack and disproportionate European designer sneakers, which magically lose half their value the exact moment he leaves the store. Then, he takes a regular Uber, or gets into a Honda Civic of questionable year, and drives back to the apartment where he still splits the rent with 3 friends in the outskirts of Chicago. This phenomenon is the purest translation of the terrible financial education that haunts a large part of the modern population, transforming the acquisition of luxury liabilities into the official certificate of mathematical ignorance. The absolute irony lies in the fact that the Herculean effort blowing a small fortune to fake prosperity is, paradoxically, the heaviest anchor that ties these people to the margins of society. The monthly sacrifice to maintain the bizarre level of digital ostentation is so high that these people end up becoming hostages to the very ostentatious character they created on the internet. While they record videos in a dark kitchen swinging a chain with a GG buckle and drinking from a plastic cup, the bank silently recalculates the month's interest rate. It was exactly this army of infinite installment enthusiasts that dealt the killing blow to the perceived value of highly branded labels for the highest spheres of old money. When the upper class realized that the same extremely expensive tracksuit they used in the Hamptons was now being paraded daily in the food court of a random shopping mall in Kansas, the revulsion was immediate. Exclusivity disappeared from the map, the smoke of delusions of grandeur dissipated, and excessive logomania became an emergency beacon, warning from afar that the individual is most likely drowning in debt and struggling to impress ghost followers on social media. The unhealthy need for ostentation, which supposed to open doors, ended up nailing the most embarrassing sign possible on the forehead of someone trying to cheat their own bank statement. After all, when the excess of shine and giant letters come to mean the exact opposite of what they were supposed to represent, we are left to ask just one very sincere question about our real intentions in front of the mirror before leaving home. So, at the end of the day, when the ring light finally goes out and the credit card bill lands mercilessly in the mailbox, the grand verdict on what your clothes say about you is painfully simple. Personal style, posture, and true elegance are worth infinitely more than any extremely expensive Italian label sewn onto the collar of a cotton t-shirt. If the only way an individual finds to project some value in society is to transform into a walking luxury billboard through the streets of Los Angeles, perhaps the biggest deficit is not necessarily in the bank account, but rather in their own personality. True wealth, whether circulating discreetly through the wealthy suburbs of Connecticut or closing millionaire deals in Manhattan, will always prefer the comfortable silence of anonymity over the desperate scream of a giant golden logo buckle. Now, the million-dollar question, or at least the value of a neon hoodie paid in 12 installments. Do you agree that this fever of ostentation and logomania has crossed all limits of common sense? Leave here in the comments the funniest, most absurd, or most embarrassing story you have ever witnessed of someone flaunting a designer brand just to pretend they belong to the millionaire club. And of course, if this analysis made you rethink that online shopping cart, do not forget to leave your like. Subscribe to the channel for more sarcastic dives into human psychology, and share this video with anyone who urgently needs a financial reality check.